Right now, more fallout from this week's revelation of a group chat mishap that leaked plans for military strikes. We're going to have the latest on that investigation, plus a local expert who will talk about the app that's in the spotlight. Plus, a tax credit aimed at helping Georgia's foster children is working its way through the Gold Dome. We're going to hear from one organization's plans for at least pushing its renewal. And how have demographic changes helped reshape the housing market? We'll talk about that coming up as well. This is The Take. Let's get it. Hello and welcome. I'm Chesley McNeil, and this is The Take, where we go above and beyond the headlines and we look at the why and how stories are impacting you and your community. We bring experts in to give their take on today's top stories and try to have a little fun as well. All right, let's start with this. There's plenty of activity helping, or at least happening under the Gold Dome ahead of the end of the legislative session next week. One of the items that will hopefully survive is the renewal of the state's Fostering Success tax credit. Here to talk more about that is Allison Ash. She's the president and CEO of Root Family Services. Allison, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, let's get started with the Fostering Success tax credit. What is that exactly?
The Fostering Success tax credit was passed a few years ago out of the legislature, and it's an opportunity for Georgia's taxpayers to divert a portion of their Georgia income tax liability to help children who are aging out of the foster care system. It's an exciting opportunity to help young people pursue, who have experienced the foster care system, pursue their secondary education and help launch them into young adulthood.
It's been since 22 since it was signed by Governor Kemp. How successful has the program been for our foster kids?
It's been very successful. It's helped agencies across the state who help young people aging out of foster care, also helped young people directly. It helps them with housing, wraparound support services, mental health services, educational scholarships and services, everything they need to be able to launch into young adulthood. And we're excited that the legislature this year is looking at how to expand and make that piece of legislation even better.
Talk to me about the foster care program. Is it hurting right now, or is it in good shape?
Well, foster care in general over the past 5 years since the pandemic has struggled a little bit to recruit foster parents. I think when people first came out of the pandemic, they were feeling very tired and like they couldn't take on more. So there has been a recruitment challenge with finding foster parents. And we still do need foster parents. We at Root Family Services are constantly looking for those who are willing to foster. But other than some of the recruitment challenges we're seeing, the work is going very well. And this legislation to help young people aging out of foster care is particularly important. And I'm personally excited that the state and our legislation is looking at what happens to young people after foster care.
That's pretty good. All right. Are there any other programs to help foster kids here in our state?
Obviously, there's lots of programs. There's programs to prevent children from going into foster care. There's programs like Roots that recruit, train, and support foster parents. Also at Root, we do help young people who are aging out of foster care. We provide housing, life skills training, mental health supports, vocational and educational supports. And we're able to do that through programs like the Fostering Success tax credit. So we hope that people, that your listeners and your viewers will take advantage of that tax credit. They can find more information at wellroot.org.
All right. And so now, let's talk to me a little bit about if the credit doesn't go through, what would be the backlash from that?
Well, we believe the credit will go through. Right now, in a time where there's lots of political things going on, it's not very political to help children. And the changes that are being proposed are ones that we think that everyone can get behind. We are proposing, or the legislature is proposing that the tax credit, the money available for the tax credit will be expanded, and that $30 million will be available for youth aging out of the system or youth who have experienced the system. That's actually another important change that's happening this year. In the past, it was for young people who were turning 18 who were still in foster care. Now, young people who have experienced foster care but may have been either adopted or reunited with their birth families can take advantage of the program. And now the program used to only include post-secondary education, like the University System of Georgia. Now it also includes vocational training and apprenticeships, which are for some young people the more appropriate path. So We do encourage your viewers to take the time to call your legislators and encourage them to support the changes that are in front of the legislature right now about the tax credit.
All right, sounds good. Allison, thank you for all the work that you're doing here in our state, and thank you for joining us on the show and your insight.
Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. All right, the measure is working its way through committee in the Senate. It passed the House with just 2 no votes. One of them, Republican Charlize Byrd from Woodstock. In a statement to 11Alive, she said, "No doubt HB 136 is a worthy cause. However, every other bill we vote on seems to be another tax carve-out. Instead of playing the carve-out game, let's abolish the state income tax entirely." All right, right now, you're taking a look at the site, what used to be the Francis Key Scott Bridge in Baltimore. Today marks 1 year since a barge struck the span across the harbor and caused it to collapse. 6 construction workers were killed in that disaster. NTSB investigators are now warning there were problems before the crash, a lack of inspections that agents say could have warned operators the bridge's collapse risk was nearly 30 times above the acceptable threshold established for critical essential bridges in the United States. We talk with NBC's Jay Gray about how this moment is now shedding new light on fixing other bridges across the United States in need of critical repair.
The NTSB now calling for urgent vulnerability assessments for 68 bridges across 19 states, including the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, the Brooklyn Bridge, and the Talmadge Bridge there in Georgia. So a lot of bridges that they're very concerned about.
Build of the Key Bridge has a target completion date of 2028. The cost is just under $2 billion to rebuild that bridge. All right, let's take a look at our forecast for today, and it's, well, going to be another nice one out there, folks. If you haven't had a chance to take advantage of it yet, maybe today is your day. Yesterday, we were approaching that 80-degree mark. Well, today, a little bit cooler, thanks to a front that has pushed through our area. That front is causing us to be slightly cooler than we were yesterday, but still above our average. 73 degrees for the forecast high. That's pretty comfortable, right? 75 will be the high on Thursday. Will continuously warm up as we head toward the end of the week, with temperatures getting up to 79 degrees by the time we hit Friday. There will be a few extra clouds working in, so some of that moisture coming back to the area. No rain coming out of the clouds for Friday. We'll just have a mix of sun and clouds. We'll continue that on Saturday. There are some hints that there could be an isolated shower around Saturday. I'm not even going to predict that. We're looking at a 40% chance, a better chance for that rain coming to us on Sunday, and then a front coming through by Monday. In fact, Monday morning, there could be a couple thunderstorms around the forecast area. As that front moves out, we'll clear out on Tuesday with 75 degrees for the forecast high. All right, you're watching The Take. We'll be right back right after this. All right, welcome back to the show. Today, a review continues into the group chat that mistakenly included a journalist outlining military plans by some of President Trump's top national security advisors just hours before U.S. airstrikes were carried out in Yemen. During a Senate hearing yesterday, National Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard and CIA Director John Ratcliffe said the information was not classified. However, Georgia Senator John Ossoff pressed the CIA Director to characterize what actually took place.
This was a huge mistake, correct?
No.
A national political...
Hold on.
No, you
Let me
hold
answer.
on. No, Director
The
Ratcliffe,
reason
I asked you a yes or no question, and now you hold on. A national political reporter
You can characterize it how you want.
was made privy
The White
to
House has
sensitive
made
information
clear
about
that there
imminent
was an
military
inadvertent
operations against a
mistake,
foreign terrorist
an inadvertent
organization.
mistake of adding a reporter.
And that wasn't a huge
to
mistake?
Israel.
That wasn't a huge mistake?
Well, I think they characterized
This is
it as
an
a
embarrassment.
mistake.
This is utterly unprofessional. There's been no apology. There has been no recognition of the gravity of this error.
Well, that was quite an exchange. Joining us now is NBC Washington correspondent Alice Barr. And Alice, I understand you have some breaking news this morning for us.
Yeah, so we want to express that The Atlantic has just published the unredacted comments of this Signal group chat. So we had heard from Jeffrey Goldberg, the executive editor of The Atlantic, who's the journalist that was added to this chat. He said yesterday that he was kind of speaking to national security experts and trying to figure out if more could be released, and they now have. They've put out everything except for one name of a CIA operative that they were asked not to release. And The Atlantic says that they've done this because repeatedly the top intelligence officials, President Trump, have all said that this was not classified information, that there was no classified information contained in the group chat. So Jeffrey Goldberg certainly has been pushing back on the Trump administration officials who have repeatedly kind of accused him of lying, of mischaracterizing what the contents of this group chat were. And now he has said that he wanted to go ahead and just publish it all so that Americans could make up their own minds about, how they view what was stated in here. And again, with the understanding that according to the Trump administration, none of this information is classified. It does give specific timing of when these attacks against the Houthi rebels, Iranian-backed rebels in Yemen were set to take off, the weapon systems, all of the kinds of information that Jeffrey Goldberg had previously said was contained in that.
Wow, so this seems to be really, really critical. This seems to be what Democrats wanted to see or wanted to hear from. What are you hearing from other members of the other side of the aisle about this?
Yeah, on the Republican side, the Tom Cotton, who was the top Republican in that Senate hearing, he did not refer to this incident during his opening statements. And the Republican senators on this committee, this was a global threats hearing with the Senate committee, they largely asked other questions about China, about Russia, and really generally steered clear. But we have heard from some Republicans saying that clearly there were mistakes made here and that they think there should be some kind of investigation. Will
there be any other hearings today? Are there any more hearings scheduled today?
Yep, we're going to be hearing a whole lot more because the House gets its crack at this same kind of supposed to just be going through general global threats in a House hearing that's going to be getting started before too long here. But we certainly expect that now this is going to take on even more than we thought, an outsized role in that, because there's a lot more to refer to now on paper in terms of what The Atlantic is alleging went down in that group chat with top U.S. officials about the sensitive military information with a journalist somehow invited in.
Well, more and more information coming out. Alice, really appreciate you for that breaking news and your insight. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. All right, so what is this app Signal and how could it have led to such a firestorm? Joining us now on the show is Rajiv Garg, who is the Associate Professor of Information Systems at Emory and an expert on social media usage. Rajiv, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Can you please describe what Signal does and why is it so unique?
So Signal is essentially a messaging app where you can create groups. You can say social media, kind of an app where you connect with other people like a typical iMessage, WhatsApp, or any other platform. The cool thing about Signal is it encrypts the data between the sender and the receiver. So anybody in between cannot see what you're sending.
So they have to be added, like the journalist that was added was able to see it all, right? Gotcha.
Yes.
In a general sense, do you see this app as a good thing or good for us to use?
So I think for messaging, like compared to what other alternatives are, like unless you're using, say, for example, iMessage, which is encrypted, I think Signal is a good alternative to where more people can have this. It's platform agnostic. So people on Android, people on iPhones, they all can use the same app.
Gotcha.
One of the interesting thing is you can actually also use this on the desktop as well. So somebody accidentally is synchronizing their app on their phone with a computer, somebody else's computer. Now somebody else can start sending messages, receiving messages for this individual as well.
Are there any better apps than this one that could be used?
So I personally use WhatsApp, iMessage, and Signal, like all three. The most of of your friends, wherever they are, you end up using that sort of a platform. So I have a bunch of friends on iMessage, which is also encrypted, WhatsApp, that's also encrypted. But in WhatsApp, essentially, Facebook is collecting a lot of additional data on the user behavior as well.
Well, a lot of attention now is coming to this app. Do you find it surprising that it was easy for this mistake to happen?
No, so I think we all probably have made this mistake at some point where we have accidentally wanted to send a message to somebody, but we sent it to somebody else because the name sounded familiar and we couldn't recall the name at the right moment. So I think the mistake could be honest, and very common. But the second thing is like potentially hackers exploit this thing as well. So because it relies on people knowing the names of the individuals without realizing what their actual number is. So what typically the hackers could do is I can, for example, hack somebody's phone and essentially use their account to change my number, so change the SIM on the phone to my actual phone number. And then I tell all my connections that, hey, my number has changed. So now they have a different number stored under or the correct entity's name. So as a result, in future, anytime the individual is sending a message thinking it's coming to the right individual, it's actually going to the hacker.
So your name is quite unique, Rajiv, right? So if I just pulled that up and it just gave me a name, I just assume that that's the right number. That's what you're saying to us, right? Where I need really to check that number.
Yes, that is correct. So, but it should be in the contacts, right? So either you're looking up by the number or you're looking up in your contacts with the name. So if accidentally or somebody intentionally takes my phone and says or sends a message that my number has changed, but that number that they gave you is now the different or a hacker's number, now you will have my number as a new number which belongs to somebody else but stored under my name. So when you look up Rajiv, you're going to see the name correctly, maybe the picture correctly if they have done the right thing, hacked correctly, but the number will be different and you won't always remember the number.
Gotcha. Quickly, any other safety tips you can give us so that we don't make mistakes like this anymore?
So anytime, I would say if you're getting a message that the person has changed the number, just verify that this is the right person, because there's a lot of scam happening on these platforms where people will change the number and now you're communicating with somebody else. I would say if, you have sort of an alternative location. I'm talking old school, like the phone book where you have the numbers. You maybe verify sending a text message to the number and saying, look, I got a message that your number is changed.
Right.
Is this right? Right. Again, this is a lot of work to be done. Other thing people can do is every app could be password or PIN protected. So even if you're using it, like somebody syncs your app on a computer, they won't be able to use it without an additional layer of security, like a PIN number or a password. So I think if you're sending sensitive information, you need to adopt these privacy or security practices where you protect or add an additional layer of security on top of these apps. Gotcha.
Emory Professor Rajiv Garg, thank you for joining us this morning and giving us that insight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, don't go anywhere, folks. Plenty more show coming up right after the break. All right, welcome back to the show. America's changing landscape is having a direct impact on the nation's home buying market. The latest findings from the National Association of Realtors shows the largest block of first-time buyers came from black homeowners. Here in Georgia, homeownership amongst young people is mixed, with Hispanics representing the largest share at close to 36%. Joining us now is Connor Beecham, the co-owner and senior loan officer of Hometown Mortgage. Welcome to the show. Connor, how you doing?
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right. Connor, talk to me about the demographic changing in home buying. How have you seen it?
Well, I think that, a lot of mortgage people and realtors, they pull from the markets that they exist in. And so, and from where you're from and your backgrounds and people you went to college with. And so, I grew up in North Atlanta, and so that's predominantly a white area. And so a lot of the people that I'm doing business with are people that are referral-based people. So church and gym and small group and things like that. And so, I get a little bit of a mix, but the majority of my customers are certainly white.
You heard the statistics I gave you earlier, or may have mentioned earlier. How has that enhanced here in Metro Atlanta?
How is what enhanced?
The statistics I gave about the changing landscape, being in Atlanta here, we have 36%, I think, Hispanics now, first-time home buyers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's certainly an increase in home ownership. I think the government has done a really good job actually of increasing access to conventional and FHA loans and down payment assistance programs as well. And so I think that as long as home buyers can focus on finding the area that fits their budget, and they talk to a loan officer like myself beforehand so they can understand what their budget and what they qualify for. I think that a lot of these loan programs that are out there right now are helping a lot of homeowners actually achieve their dreams of homeownership.
Put on your crystal ball, or pull out your crystal ball for me there, and tell me, where do you see the market in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I think the next 2 years, I think the inflation is going to cool, and I think the interest rates are going to decrease. Right now, they're hovering around mid-6s and high 7s, and so I think that as inflation decreases, you're certainly going to see interest rates come down. But as those rates come down, I think more and more buyers enter the market, and so what we're trying to advise a lot of our customers on is, certainly get pre-qualified now, understand what you can purchase now, because as soon as those rates go down, the prices tend to go up. And so you want to definitely be able to purchase a home at a lower cost basis so that you can refinance it, instead of the other way around where you're actually you're purchasing a home at a higher cost basis and it might be a marginally lower interest rate. Correct.
Is there a hot spot right now to buy a home?
I'd say for first-time home buyers, a lot of the stuff outside the perimeter is certainly a hot spot. A lot of the people that we do loans for are buying places in Smyrna. We're seeing a lot of Marietta and Roswell, Sandy Springs. Tucker's kind of become a little bit of a hot market. So I think a lot of the places outside the perimeter are certainly focused on first-time home buyers, and that's what the majority of my business comes from.
Gotcha. You snuck a tip in there earlier. Are there any other tips for folks that's trying to or thinking about at least buying a home now?
Yeah, I'd definitely say, your first call is to a mortgage person. A lot of people think your first call is to a real estate agent, but the real estate agent's actually just going to direct you to a mortgage person. So really what you first need to do is understand what you qualify for. And at our company, Hometown Mortgage, if you don't qualify, we actually come up with a plan for you so you can understand, how can I qualify for a home? If you've got credit problems, if you've got, debt to income, any kind of problems like that, we help you work through that so you can ultimately achieve your dream of home ownership.
Got it. Connor Beecham, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate your insight.
You.
All right, take care. Back with my final take right after this. You're watching The Take. Well, are you feeling a little stressed today? You got a lot on your mind? Certainly I understand. From inflation to work deadlines, relationship tension, there's plenty to be stressed about, right? This week, Wallet Hub compared each state across 40 key indicators of stress to determine where people should live to achieve a more relaxing life. Well, they found that the state with the most stress is New Mexico. That's followed by Nevada, Louisiana, and West Virginia. Here in Georgia, we're sitting at 13th. So what's making us so agitated, you say? Well, the Peach State ranks 6th in the nation with the work-related stress, 15th in worrying about money, and 17th in being nervous about your health and overall safety. Well, in case you're wondering, folks in Nebraska have been found to be the least stressful. In Nebraska, can you believe that? Maybe it's the corn. Maybe we need more corn. Their basketball and football teams aren't doing great. I don't know what I'm saying. Nebraska, least stress. All right, let's take a look at your 7-day outlook for today. And we are looking at, a beautiful day. Temperatures right around 73 degrees for an afternoon high. 75 tomorrow. We'll go up to 79 by Friday with a few extra clouds working in. The rain doesn't come back to us until we get to Sunday. A 40% chance for scattered showers. Front comes through on Monday. Will bring us a couple of thunderstorms. I think it'll be around early on Monday. So as we start the work week and the day, we'll have those thunderstorms around. 76 will be the afternoon high. We'll drop back down to 75 for a high temperature by Tuesday of next week, with the skies clearing out finally. All right, before we go, here's my final take. You may have heard about a plane that took off from Los Angeles. It was headed toward Shanghai in China. Well, about 2 to 3 hours into the flight, the pilot realized he forgot his passport and they had to turn back around. Of course, this created a huge inconvenience for the 257 passengers on board. I think they wound up being about 6 hours off schedule, something like that. You know what they received from the United flight for their troubles? A meal. A meal. A meal. The passengers did find out that they can file a compensation claim, but even that takes up to 14 business days for review before you can even get it or be considered to get it. A meal to turn back around. I'm going to Shanghai from a meal. How about 2 meals? How about 3 meals? How about I ain't flying no more? Thanks for joining us, folks. Have a great day.